I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Leslie Ferris Yerger. Leslie is a TEDx speaker, a first-time author with her book, Probably Benign, and a women's advocate with a laser-focused mission. Leslie was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer after an all-clear mammogram and ultrasound, experiencing firsthand the failings of our current breast cancer screening technologies. And she is now determined to advance the next generation in breast cancer screening so that her story does not become your story. Leslie speaks and writes to empower women everywhere to ask, learn, insist, and persist in order to get the breast cancer screening they so very much deserve. So Leslie, welcome. I am very much looking forward to hearing your talk on mammography alone and maybe inadequate for us and what we can do. So I am going to turn this over to you now.
Thank you so much for having me. I do so appreciate being here and being allowed to tell my story and really, more importantly, share it so that other women can learn from what happens with my story so that they can advocate and do better for themselves. And, you know, unfortunately, odd to say, we really shouldn't be having to have this conversation, just to be honest. But we do have to have this conversation because our medical community is not providing well enough for us now in terms of breast cancer screening. And that's really always been the case, but now it's coming to light and we know it. So I am a woman on a mission to make sure that women know this and that they know how to advocate for themselves to get what they deserve to have in terms of breast cancer screening, because it's not coming to us automatically. So I have about 3 slides to share that kind of tell the crux of the story. And so I'll go ahead and share those now and talk about those. And then, you know, hopefully that'll take, you know, 8-10 minutes, if that. And then we'll pop back in and take questions and have a further discussion about that. So here we go. And is that visible? Early detection is key to survival?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, you know, this is kind of, this is what I call the bummer slide of what I talk about. But it's important to know, and I find that a lot of people don't really understand the stages of breast cancer and what that's really all about. So I wrote a blog on Metastatic Breast Cancer Day, October 13th last year, and the title of it was Everything About Breast Cancer is Really About Metastatic Breast Cancer. And that is because when we have cancer in our breasts, that's stage 0, 1, 2, or 3, it cannot kill us. It just can't. Our breasts aren't a vital organ. We can do without them. We don't want to, but we can do without them. And so cancer in the breast will never kill you. But when it reaches stage 4, metastatic, stage 4 and metastatic are the exact same thing. And what that means is it has moved from your breast to a different part of your body. That's often the lungs, liver, brain, bones. That's what kills you, because we can't live without those things functioning properly. And then, so that's what breast cancer does when it goes to another part of the body. So all the chemo, all the screening, all the surgery, all the radiation, all of that is to make sure it doesn't reach stage 4 where it can kill you. So that's why early detection is so key to survival. It's always been the case, and it's still the case because we still don't have a cure for stage 4. And so that's what it's really all about. And until we find that cure, we've got to find it early before it reaches that stage. So that's what everything is about. So, you know, unfortunately, the 5-year survival rate, I think it might be up to about 30% now. This is old data, and they haven't published really new data. But the 5-year survival rate after diagnosis of stage 4 is about 25 to 30%. People are living longer with it because we are getting better treatments, but it's not a very good number, right? We don't want that number. So, so that's the deal. There are still, and have been for the last 20 years, 41,000 women dying every year from breast cancer, stage 4. All right, let's move on. So what is the problem then with our current breast cancer screening? And it has everything to do with breast density. And this picture right here are 4 different mammogram images of 4 different types of breasts. The one on the left is called a fatty breast. It's not very dense. So you can see that it looks primarily black. And so if there's something white in that image on the left there under category A, you can see it pretty well. You can see that in that picture. That white dot there is circled in the black circle. That's pretty easy for a radiologist to see in that picture. So if you have fatty breasts, or even the category B here, which is called scattered breast density, it's not very difficult to see breast cancer in a breast like that on a mammogram. So for those women who are category A or B or not dense, mammogram's pretty good. I mean, 95, 98%, that's pretty good for screening. And so, you know, for those women, fortunately, mammogram's pretty good. And that's amazing. But unfortunately, up to half of us have breast density. That's category C and D here. And breast cancer is white, and so is breast density. So it gets very difficult to see a white spot on a white image. And you can see that here. You know, the black circle on category D there, you can't see the white spot in it. It's there, but you can't see it. And this is what radiologists face. And this is what they've always faced. This is not new. This is not new. This could have been done 30 years ago. Same situation. So for women with category C and D, dense breasts, mammography alone is not really good enough to detect breast cancer early. And that's always been the case. This is not always been the case. But nonetheless, here we are. So this is the problem. And this is why I say so many times, tweets, Facebook, on and on, mammography alone is not good enough for women with C and D. And this is why it makes it pretty clear. So just quickly, just to show you kind of what's happening with our screening, this is a chart of how many breast cancers are found in women with dense breasts with certain modalities that we have. So standard mammography will find somewhere around 3.5. Some studies are 3, some studies are 1.5, some studies are 4-ish. It's in there somewhere, okay? There's no need to debate the nuances of whether it's 3.5 or 3.3 or anything like that. It's less than 4 cancers in women with dense breasts. 3D mammography, which was really sold to solve this whole problem, finds about maybe 1 more per 1,000. But for women with category D, who are the highest risk for getting breast cancer due to their density, it has shown no improvement whatsoever. That's a new thing that's just come out. Ultrasound gets us a little bit more. Maybe we're up in the 6 per 1,000 women category when you add ultrasound to either mammography or 3D mammography. There are some new technologies, one called molecular breast imaging, created and used as standard of care at all Mayo Clinic sites, which finds 300 to 400% more than standard mammography. So that gets us up into the 14, 15 finds of cancer per 1,000 women with dense breasts. And MRI will find a lot too. some people are doing some things with MRI to try to make it faster and cheaper so that we can use it more for screening. But this is the difference. I show this to show you that, you know, in 1,000 women with dense breasts, there's somewhere around 15 to 20 cancers, and mammography's finding less than 4. And that's our problem. And that's why we have to advocate for ourselves to get this breast cancer screening that we deserve to have, some of these new things that we're going to talk about, because mammography is simply not finding them because of the density issue that I showed you before. So I'm going to pull back here. Okay. We're back, right? Yeah. So I hope, you know, I usually spend a little bit longer in my presentations explaining things in a little bit more detail, but we don't really have a lot of time this morning for that. And I think, you know, we want to take some questions, and I would like for you to also talk about what you did when you advocated for yourself, how that went. How hard was it? How easy was it? What are the issues that you ran into? Because part of what we do in our organization now with My Density Matters is we ask women to find out their breast density and then talk to their doctor about additional screening. And gosh, that sounds simple and easy. But as I think you're gonna talk a little bit about, it's not that easy to get what we should have right now. And we have to be adamant, we have to advocate, and we have to insist and persist. And so that's not always easy. And again, we shouldn't be having to do this, but we do have to do this. So can you talk a little bit about your experience? Because I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is such important information. And I will admit that I heard this talk from Leslie and I was like, I don't know my breast density. I mean, I always thought, oh, my breasts are dense. And I don't know, it's kind of like a thing where you think it's by feel, right? And that's not at all. It's not the way they feel is not like, okay, I think I'm dense or I think I'm not dense. So I had no idea. And so what Leslie said is go to your last mammography report, and on it, you will see what density you are. It won't say A, B, C, or D. And I went back and I looked at mine and it said extremely dense. So I just thought, I didn't even realize that's like a medical category or something, because it just sounds like, I don't know, somebody wrote extremely dense. It doesn't sound like a thing. And then I know that C, for instance, is heterogeneously dense, which sounds a little bit more medical to me. I had no idea that extremely dense is actually a category of density of breast tissue. And Leslie had said, I know the D, extremely dense, is 10% of women are in that category. I don't know if you know what the others are. It's kind
of like 10, 40, 40, 10. So right. 10% are fatty breasts.
Okay.
And then 40% are, you know, kind of scattered dense. 40% are heterogeneously dense, and 10% are extremely dense. And here's one thing that I failed to say while the charts were up is the more dense you are, the higher your risk of getting breast cancer.
Not related to the fact that it's hard to find the breast cancer, but
that just exacerbates the problem. No, right. It's that, so a woman with fatty breasts is much less likely to get breast cancer in the first place than a woman who has extremely dense breasts. And it's kind of a curve, right? It's kind of a curve. So the more dense you are, the more likely you are to get breast cancer in the first place. And just to add insult to injury, the less effective a mammogram is.
Yes.
So it's a double whammy situation. Right. Anyway, go ahead with your story.
Yeah. So anyway, I have no family history of breast cancer, but I was alarmed when I saw that, and I had heard the facts and from Leslie, and obviously her story, because you had no family history of breast cancer either. Really. You had just had an all clear mammogram and ultrasound like a few months before you were diagnosed with stage 4.
Think of the chart. That doesn't
Yeah.
catch them all. And I was one of those that wasn't caught.
Right.
Yeah.
So that alarmed me because I thought, that could very well be me and I would have no idea. And the testing's not going to show it. I'm in the worst category possible for detection. So I then went ahead and I spend part of the year in Sarasota, the other part in Chicago. And thanks to Leslie's resources on which website is it? Is it My Density Matters, that where you have the
Options
locations?
page. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I did my own little research and I looked at, molecular breast imaging and then I also went to Leslie's website and found out that actually by now I was in Sarasota and I found out that Florida is actually a pretty good state for molecular breast imaging.
Yep.
There are a number of centers and one of them is in Tampa, which is an hour and 15 minutes away from me. In Chicago, where I spend the summers, there is a center in the western suburbs. What's the hospital there?
There's one at Edward Hospital in Naperville, and then there's going to be one installed like within the day, I think, at Good Shepherd Hospital in Barrington,
Is
Illinois.
that
So,
the one you raised money for?
yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, this is one of the things that Leslie's doing is she's raising money to actually for hospitals be able to purchase more of these molecular breast imaging machines. So anyway, I then, this is how, I just called the center at the Tampa hospital and said, hi, I'd like to sign up to get a molecular breast imaging. And they said, you need a doctor's order? And I said, well, I'm in Sarasota. My doctor's in Chicago. Is it okay? Can I get a doctor's order from my OB-GYN in Chicago? And, will that work? Or do you need somebody in state? And it was very interesting. They said, no, I don't know why it wouldn't work. I guess you could. But if you have a problem, the one doctor who seems to be sending most of our patients for molecular breast images, Dr. Cox, I think it's Richard Cox, who I know you've talked to, and he's a big proponent and he's in Tampa. And so my plan was I'm going to try to get an order from my OB-GYN. And if I cannot, then I will go ahead and just make an appointment with this Dr. Cox and assume he will then write the order himself. It was not, so I sent a private message. My OB-GYN is in a huge practice in Chicago. There's like 12 doctors. She's one of the founding members. They're associated with Northwestern Hospital. So I thought, of course, she's going to know what this latest technology is and what the MBI is, right? And that it's critical for dense breasts. But you can't contact somebody like that. You have to go through their portal. So I sent a message through the portal to her. The title of the email was molecular breast imaging. And then I explained, I'm in category D, I've done the research. This is something I want to do. Please write the order. I'm down in Sarasota. Please write it for, I think it's now called Advent Health Hospital in Tampa. And I received a email response back from her saying an MRI is really not warranted, and it would be very hard to get through insurance. And I'm sitting here going, she literally did not read the title of my message that spelled out molecular breast imaging, and then in the text, I think I used MBI, and she assumed I was talking about an MRI. And so I then went and sent her back an email saying, no, I'm talking about molecular breast imaging. Here are links. I had links to Mayo Clinic, which is a big developer and proponent of this technology. And I then, and I sent, I think something else from Harvard. I was looking for big names so that she would, I could prevail in this. And she, I would say, used the word reluctantly, agreed to write me the order. And I told her, I said, if insurance doesn't cover it, this is not like an MRI. It's not thousands and thousands of dollars. It's $500. And for me, it's well worth peace of mind. So she wrote the order and faxed it to Tampa. And then everything went smoothly from there in terms of me actually being able to get it. It was easy to schedule because, believe it or not, they only do 3 or 4 a day there. There's not a huge demand because the word has not been out enough and not enough doctors are prescribing this. So I had my appointment. I went up there. It was easy peasy. It takes about an hour. What they're doing, what's different is that they're injecting you with a, I don't know what it's called. It's, I actually had
is the word for it. Technetium.
What?
Technetium.
Okay,
The word for it.
technician.
Yeah.
So and what it does is it's like giving blood, but it's really painless. They just go through your vein in your arm and just put it. It's a tiny little amount, and it's really not dangerous or anything. And what it does is it lights up the cancer. So then you immediately go into, there's a room and I change into a gown, and it's pretty much, the MBI is kind of like a mammogram. It's like a mammography machine. And the difference is that I'm seated, the plates are there, I'm in the plate with one breast and then with the other, and each image takes about 10 minutes. So I'm sitting, and there's 4 images, 2 on each breast. So and they don't squeeze as hard as a mammogram. So it's not the same as that, because mammogram's not comfortable, right? None of us really enjoy it. But it's fast. This one takes a little longer, but they're not squeezing quite as hard. And they actually had a little TV. I was watching like a home improvement show and chatting with the technology person at the same time, because they stay in the room with you. So it was, 4 10-minute images. And then I was done. And so really was very simple to do once you get the order. But to Leslie's point, a lot of OB-GYNs, even very well-established ones who are, I think mine like teaches at Northwestern, do not know about the MBI and do not know about this technology that really could save your life. So I am all aboard with Leslie in terms of, let's get the word out. Let's, first of all, like you said, let women know you can find out what your breast density is, and it has huge repercussions. And I don't know if every mammogram is required or has it on there, but I mean, it was readily available on mine. I mean, I don't know. Is that like
it's supposed to be spelled out in every mammogram write-up.
Right. So if it's not, can you contact the radiologist or your OB-GYN?
You can, but here's where the insist and persist comes in, because they don't really want to bother, going back and looking at your report and, trying to help you interpret what it is they wrote as their interpretation of the images that they saw, So some women that I know have kind of gotten treated like a bother. One woman I know, actually 2 that I know, it was just listed as dense breast. And she said, well, I want to know how dense. I wanted to know whether it's a C or D. Yeah. And they told her, you don't need to know that.
Hello.
And she said, yes, I do need to know that. And you need to tell me.
Right.
Tell me I don't need to know that. Right. That's baloney.
Yeah.
So this is where we need to get tough and strong and insist on what we want until we get it.
And I had to insist, and the tail end of the story is that I got the results and I'm all clear. And I have to tell you, the peace of mind that brings to me, knowing that with the kind of breasts that I have, that where you cannot detect the cancer hardly at all with mammogram and ultrasound, which, by the way, I had a mammogram and ultrasound and they were all clear in July. So, but it's not meant, and this is not my understanding, it's not meant to be a replacement for a mammogram and ultrasound. Like you do it in addition, right?
Yes. Yeah. So the Mayo Clinic will alternate. I think they alternate a 3D mammogram and a molecular breast imaging every other year for a woman with dense breasts. And they feel like that by doing that, they're covering what needs to be covered for someone with breasts like that.
Yeah.
And so now that you've done the first one, then you can set yourself on an alternate course.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. So I'm glad that you got what you wanted. I have a friend who tried the same thing. And I'm going to start calling this stuff out. It was at Rush in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And they would not write her a script for molecular breast imaging because they don't have it. It's not at their practice. So let's not kid ourselves here. Medicine is a business. And the minute they start referring people away for things that they don't have,
Yeah.
they'll start to lose revenue.
Yeah.
So she couldn't get it from them. They talked her into an A bus, which isn't even as good as handheld ultrasound from what I am gathering these days.
A-bus?
Automatic breast ultrasound. So it's
Oh.
kind of a machine that does ultrasound
Okay.
without doing the hand wand, like we all have had one reason or the other. They would not do it. So now she has to either not, and she has extremely dense breasts too. She either has to not get it or she has to move doctors.
Right. Find a doctor who will,
Yeah.
prescribe it. I mean,
Yeah.
who will write the order.
And that's just wrong.
I
You
know.
look at that chart that I showed,
Yeah.
it doesn't find as much, particularly in an extremely dense breast, and
Right.
they wouldn't do it. So I'm not impressed with that.
No.
Nor should anyone else be. And so, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because
So tell me, what are you doing? So I know you wrote your memoir and
Yes.
about this journey and your mission, but you are raising funds to bring more machines because we need the machines, the MBI,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you're also raising awareness by speaking. So talk to us a little bit more about your endeavors.
Right. Thank you so much. So I have written the book. I walked the Camino de Santiago to raise funds for the Mayo Clinic to further advance this technology and get further studies out so that more people know about it, so that more people use it, and so we can start finding more cancers early. Then that's what my book, Probably Benign, is about. So it weaves breast cancer screening, my journey, the Camino de Santiago, all into one story in that book. I'm also a speaker, and I'm studying through the National Speakers Association to become a certified professional speaker. I hope to get that done in May, so that then I can speak at those bigger women's venues when we ultimately get back out, to going to conferences, to, having conventions and stuff. I can be a speaker at those things and reach more people at a time. So I'm doing that. A big thing that I'm working on is a website and a social media, and really I want to call it a movement called My Density Matters.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to spread the word that way through the website and online. We're actually launching a day, February 24th, called Find Out My Breast Density Day, where we want everybody to do what you did. And that is to look up their report, find out their breast density, and talk to their doctor about additional screening if they need it. Let's not forget, if you're a category A or B, you're fine. You're fine. And that's wonderful. But again, those with a higher risk, more likely to get breast cancer in the first place, are those C and D people. So we're working on that big time. So there will be more coming out about that day on February 24th. So really all of those things I'm working toward getting more and better through the speaking and the social media and this day that we're looking at.
And to everybody to know, I am going to be putting a link to Leslie's website in the comments, where you can go and learn more about Leslie's journey, buy her book, request to speak to your group, which I would highly recommend. She only gave you a taste today, and she gives a fabulous talk. And I'm also going to put a link to her other website, that her movement, that mydensitymatters.org, where you can learn more about breast density, including some of the images she showed. The slides she showed are in there, and molecular breast imaging, as well as other treatments. So I want to really recommend that everybody check out those websites I'll be putting in the comments, so that you can educate yourself and advocate for yourself.
And I spoke to the head of 3 different community hospitals. And what he told me was, this is where this will start, is in your community hospitals, because unfortunately, well, or fortunately, the community hospitals are more about their constituencies' health. Their community hospital, that's what they're there for. Whereas some of your bigger organizations are really more focused on research, their own research, and they're not as patient oriented. So don't be surprised if you get really rebuked by them and the community hospitals start to embrace it for the good of their community. And lo and behold, perhaps that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. I mean, we've got some major hospitals in Chicago. So I hope they come on board, and certainly across. So are they, so talk to me about, because I'm curious about this, about Mayo, and are they the ones who developed this technology?
Mm-hmm.
And then they are trying to get the word out about it, and then hospitals obviously need to purchase it, and I'm sure it's an expensive machine for certain smaller hospitals.
Yeah. It's not as expensive as an MRI or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So then, so that's what's even more astounding about community hospitals being, that probably don't have the kind of funding that some of our huge city hospitals have, are jumping on this, are seeing the need, and are doing something about it.
Yeah, they are. And one more thing that I'll add is, we've been talking about molecular breast imaging, and it is a good path to finding all these cancers that are now being left undetected. And with that said, I don't really care how they're found. If somebody can create a magic wand and have it light up on the wand, go for it. I don't care. I'm looking to find all the cancers that are now left undetected, like we saw in that chart. And so there are a couple other ways of doing it. There's something called contrast enhanced mammography, which really hasn't been studied very much, especially in a screening setting, that some people are starting to embrace now, that can work. And then there's obviously MRI, which will find everything. It's just such a big beast, and it's expensive that it can't really be used to screen the masses. But people are working on something called abbreviated or fast MRI. So if you hear of those things and that's offered to you, they work,
Okay.
They work. So there's not just one way to do this. There are several. And like I said, I don't care which one you use, but use one.
And absolutely. And now that I've gotten myself educated on this, I can tell you, when I see my OB-GYN in Chicago in June, I'll be having a conversation with her about this and saying, really encouraging her to, which is kind of crazy but necessary, to get educated on this, because she's got to have a nice portion of her clientele who have C and D category density breasts, and should really be given the option to, first of all, be educated about what that means for them. And, in terms of their higher risk of breast cancer, even without a history of breast cancer, and their additional need for additional screening. So that, I think a good doctor is going to want their patients to be as educated as possible and get the treatment, the preventive treatment, because it's, so that's definitely something I plan to do, and I'll let you know how that goes. But I know everybody's going to wonder, because you did say you have stage 4 breast cancer. How are you doing in terms of your treatment? I know you're undergoing treatment, and how are you feeling? I know, by the way, everybody, Leslie's showing up today on the tail end of COVID. So this is, you're hearing her cough because talking and COVID, but so amazed that you still were able to make the time for us and so appreciated. But I want to know how you're doing COVID and obviously with your diagnosis of cancer.
Thank you. I'm on the back end of my COVID, problem. It might linger for, another week or so. The only thing I have to say about COVID is don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
we're not really here to talk about COVID, but please don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
It's not to be taken lightly. It's not a hoax. It's real.
Yeah.
And it's a problem. So, but cancer wise, I was at the Mayo Clinic December 21st, actually, for my every 3-month checkup. And the PET scan came back very nicely. There's no evidence of active disease. They can see where the disease was in my bones, but it's not active now. And so I've really, really responded well to the course of treatment that I've been on for the last over 3 years now. And I'm hoping for that to continue for, quite some time into the future. And then when that stops working, we can try other things. And that's the way it goes with stage 4 breast cancer is you just keep going through things. And
well, I have to say I'm so inspired by you, and that you have turned this really tragic diagnosis into a call to action for women everywhere, and a desire, a mission to prevent this from happening to any woman that you can. And
we can do it. That's the thing. This isn't a pipe dream of mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All we have to do is use what we've got.
Yeah.
Seems like it ought to be able to be done. So if I have to be the one that keeps pushing and pushing and pushing until it happens, then I will. So I think it's to the point now where we women should not be putting up with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll
and I have been pretty clear, but I think that sometimes even I sugarcoat this a little bit so that nobody gets upset.
Right.
Well, you know what? Maybe they need to get upset.
Yeah. Yes. There's a reason to get upset about this. So I hear you.
Yeah. So insist and persist.
Really big thank you to Leslie for sharing her story, her passion, her mission. Insist and persist is I think exactly the message that we need to take away from this. So thank you everyone again, and please check out the links we'll be putting in the comments, and be well, stay safe, and learn about your breast density and take action to advocate for yourself, and insist and persist. Thank you again, Leslie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.